UK Wine Show, show number 856. Chardonnay clones explained with Ian Quinn of Two Terraces, Hawke's Bay. Hi guys, my name's Chris Scott.
And I'm Jane Scott.
And together we founded 3050 and the UK Wine Show. Today I'm talking with Ian Quinn from Two Terraces, who set up his vineyard in Hawke's Bay, New Zealand with his wife Linda. We've been talking to him over the last couple of weeks. One of the things Ian's got is he's got a number of different Chardonnay clones across his vineyard, and each one is a very specific reason. We get into them, where they came from, and what they bring to the glass. I hope your week's been very good. I've had a very busy week. I ran a level 3 on Saturday, then another level 3 on Monday, the last day, covering for Tom on the month for his Monday course. He was at the London Wine Fair, and we spent a day there on Wednesday, Jane.
Yeah, we ended up going on the Wednesday and visited quite a few stands, actually. There was the addition of beer and spirits, which we didn't really scoot around very much. Went straight for the wine stands. And Chris was on the hunt for an Albarino. Having tasted so many in New Zealand, we were concentrating on Spain, weren't we, Rias Baixas?
Yeah, there's a whole stand on Rias Baixas, Albarinos.
There were how many, Chris?
There was over 50 different Albarinos there, and I didn't try them all. I got through about 30 of them. I skipped out certain ones. But yeah, I was really trying to get my head around Spain's Albarino now that I've sort of seen a fair bit of New Zealand Albarino.
I thought they were all pretty good quality, to be honest, the ones that I tried. And I left you to it. You were determined to go through and taste nearly all of them. We also tasted some Lambrusco, of course. We went to one stand and she had said that there wasn't so much demand for Lambrusco, but Frappato from Sicily, she was seeing a bit of an uptick for that as a chilled red. And the one we tried, I quite liked.
Yeah, it was all right.
Chris, not so impressed, obviously. But the wine that stood out for me was at the English wine stand, and that was the 1276 Chardonnay. They are a new winery. They've won a gold for this in the still wine category at the International Wine Challenge, and then it was upgraded to a trophy winner. And it was very good, I thought. Really good quality.
Yeah, no, it was very nice. It's very hard to difference between a gold medal and a trophy. I think it's very, very subtle.
And of course, we stopped by at Ellis Wines and had a chat with Louise there and tasted a few new wines on their stand. So all in all, it was a good visit.
We bumped into a patron, Peter Leeks, and then we also saw a couple of people who listened to the show. They're not
That's
patrons.
right, good visit.
The show, I thought, wasn't the biggest it's been, probably the smallest, but that's also because we went on the Wednesday, which is the quietest day of the shows. And last night, we got back from the London Wine Fair and we had our Patron wine chat.
That's right, we had a few people on, a few new ones and people who had joined our chat previously. So we had a good old chinwag about our trip around New Zealand, and Chris shared some photos.
It was great. I made a slideshow and everything.
He
It was
did.
Fabulous. Made everybody watch my happy family photos.
No, it was a good recap of the wine regions that we visited as well, and some of the wines that we drank.
I think the photo helped remind you of the stories and things like that we had. Right, okay, Jane, let's get our Patreon flashcard question. And this week's question comes from our level 3 German flashcard deck. We've also this week got our level 4 Asti deck. If you're a Patreon Plus member, you'll get those plus every day a different set of multi-choice questions. And Peter was saying he likes to do it every day.
He does. He logs on every day and keeps his wine knowledge fresh and up to date. So the question this week is, what is Sus Reserve?
Okay, we'll get you the answer to that at the end of the show. But next up comes the news.
Well, first up this week, English wines have achieved their strongest ever showing at the International Wine Challenge competition, winning a record 25 gold medals and topping the table for golds per entry, with England and Kent in particular leading the way. Experts said the surge reflects maturing vineyards, longer bottle aging, and improved precision in wineries. Older plantings, such as those at Nyetimber, are now delivering greater complexity, while producers like Whiston are gaining recognition for aged cuvées. While warmer English summers are also supporting ripening, particularly in the most southerly vineyards. Out of all the countries, overall, England ranked 9th in terms of the number of medals, but led globally on golds per entry. France remained top of the medal table, followed by Spain and Portugal. And judges said English wine is now being judged alongside the world's best on quality alone in this year's International Wine Challenge.
As Jane said, Kent remained the standout region with 12 golds, while many of the supermarkets continued to get quite a few awards, actually, which means that very soon we're going to be getting our 25% off, and I'll be going through the golds and silvers and getting myself a few cases of wines from various supermarkets just to give them a try and know that you're getting a good example. A gold and a silver and a medal in a competition tends to tell you it's a good to outstanding example of that style. Whether you like the style or not, who knows? What's the next story, Jane?
Well, growers in France are urging Brussels and Paris to lift a long-standing ban on hybrid grapes, arguing the vines could help vineyards cope with heat, drought and disease while reducing chemical use. In the Loire Valley, retired grower Daniel Mondon has championed old hybrids such as Bacco, Cibelle and Couderc, saying he farmed without pesticides and still achieved healthy vines and low-intervention winemaking. Advocates say the ban, which has been in place since 1934 and carried into EU rules, no longer fits a warming climate where disease pressure and drought are increasing across vineyards. The debate has now reached Brussels, with supporters arguing hybrids pose no added methanol risk, while officials continue to review restrictions. Some producers are even selling wines as fermented grape juice beverages, and new growers in France and Italy are expanding plantings for resilience and lower chemical inputs.
To all the organic producers who have been affected by the bans on copper-based sprays and are leaving the organics because it's just too costly, pewees and hybrids offer a low chemical option for them. The fact that EU rules mean that the products often have to be called fermented grape juice should not put them off. The thing is that most of the modern hybrids, pewees as well, are considered vitis vinifera from a rules point of view. They've had the DNA of all the other grape varieties almost completely bred out of them over hundreds of years, and what's been left is just the DNA needed to ward off molds and mildews and disease pressure in the vineyard. What Daniel Mondon wanted was older hybrids that have a lot more non-vitis vinifera in them to be allowed. Okay, Jane, what's the last news item?
Well, finally this week, Canada's restrictions on US alcohol have dealt a sharp blow to American wineries, cutting exports by $343 million and intensifying tensions ahead of key trade talks this year. Trade data shows US wine exports to Canada fell 77% between 2024 and 2025 after provincial liquor stores removed American products in early 2025 in response to the tariffs. For years, Canada was the largest foreign buyer of US wine, but most provinces stopped carrying American labels, leaving only limited sales in privatized markets, such as Alberta. Washington is pressing Ottawa to restore access, arguing the restrictions are damaging producers in key wine states, including California, as well as in bourbon regions in Tennessee and Kentucky for spirits. The dispute has become part of wider North American trade negotiations expected to feature in upcoming talks under the Canada-US-Mexico Agreement review cycle later this year.
The latest round of negotiations between US, Canada and Mexico should be quite interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how things go, with people realising a lot of Trump's tariff stick was actually just smoke and mirrors. Okay, Jane, let's get into Friday Lambrusco. Now, we've already actually drunk the wine.
We have. We had that last night with our Patreon wine chat.
Yeah.
And very good it was too. So what was the wine again, Chris?
It was a Paltrineri Grosso, which is a Charmat method wine. But again, this time they still have some lees and contact. So it had a little bit more oomph to it associated with the lees work, and you could detect the autolic flavours as well. In fact, one of the Albarinos I had in the London Wine Fair, they had gone for an aged Charmat method as well. So I've gone from not ever seeing them anywhere almost to seeing 3 in 2 weeks. So
and we tasted the London Clay, which was a Charmat method, an English wine, but they keep it in the tank for 6 months before bottling.
That's right. Tasted the Lambrusco. I thought it was pretty good. I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it. It was another white fizz, wasn't it?
Lighter.
Or lighter, actually. It wasn't pink, but it had depth of colour, didn't it?
Yeah,
I would class it more as a white style.
Again, the grapes were those Lambrusco Subara grape variety. Yeah, I think it was just another classic. I've got 3 more Lambruscos to try. One is a traditional method, one's an ancestral method, but I can't remember what the other one is. So there's a few to go. Rightio, Jane, let's get a reminder of this week's flashcard question.
The question is, what is Sus Reserve?
Right, we will give you the answer to that at the end of the show. But next up, I've got my guest, Ian Quinn, who is the co-owner and viticulturalist at Two Terraces in Hawke's Bay, New Zealand. Two Terraces has half of their vineyard planted in Chardonnay, and Ian's chosen to do this with 5 different clones rather than a single selection. If you're not sure what a clone is, a clone in simple terms is just an almost genetically identical cutting from a single parent vine. Now, there are different clones out there, and what's happened is a vine's mutated a little bit, someone's taken a cutting, and then that cuttings include that mutation. As you listen to the interview, you'll hear us talk about some of the mutations that have occurred and how these have created different clones of Chardonnay. Let's have a listen to what Ian has to say. Hi, my name's Chris Scott and I'm here with Ian Quinn from Two Terraces in Hawke's Bay. How are you, mate?
Good, thanks.
Excellent. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about Chardonnay clones. We found out last week that you've planted about half your vineyard in Chardonnay, but I've noticed there's 5 different clones. I think there's 5 different clones.
Yeah, that's right.
And what I want to do is I just want to talk about what the different clones you're running are,
Yep.
why you're running such a range of clones, and also what you think they give to the wine. So let's start off with why plant in 10 hectares 5 different clones?
So we've always sort of wanted to give our winemakers options to kind of build complexity in their wines. So we've always wanted it more than a single selection of any particular variety. In the case of Chardonnay, half the vineyard is Chardonnay, as you've said, and so it just sort of made sense to carry on exploring those different selections.
And is it each block is a block of a clone?
Yeah, that's right. Everything's a particular clone or selection. We're not intermingling them or anything like that in the vineyard anyway.
Do you want to tell us what the clones are? We'll come and talk about each clone individually in a minute, but do you want to just give us an overview of the different clones?
We have clone 548 and clone 95, which are both Burgundy selections. We have Mendoza and 1066. 1066 is another Burgundy originated clone. And then we have a selection called we call Calera. I think it's FPS 107. That's out of California originally. I think Josh Jensen selected that. The origins of that are sort of a little bit murky, lost in time. Came from France, not exactly which vineyard. There's a couple of rumours around it being de Jacques or DRC, but I don't think anyone really knows now.
All right, so is there a particular reason you chose those clones? Because how many clones are available in New Zealand?
Yeah, quite a large number. Some of the older clones are more maybe suited to sparkling or volume production. The first one we selected was 548, which was relatively new to New Zealand at the time. It's a really nice spectrum of fruit flavours from citrus, yellow fruit like nectarines, potentially into peach at times, although not so much inland where we are. And yeah, just the bunch structure makes it reasonably resilient as Chardonnay goes.
Loose structure.
Yeah, but looser.
I've been looking at Pee-wee wines and Pee-wee selections and all that type of thing. And when they're looking at it, loose cluster is what you want really, isn't it?
Yeah, yep.
And that's for mold and mildews.
Yeah. And if you kind of contrast that with, say, Clone 95, it's renowned for being larger bunches, tighter and more susceptible to rot once it's getting ripe. But we sort of went with that because it was, again, we want that diversity, and Clone 95 sort of gives you a kind of a creamy textural element that we don't get from some of the other selections.
And where was 95 developed? If it's tight bunches, then you'd think it'd be developed somewhere dry.
I think it definitely came out of Burgundy, but it was probably one of the earlier selections. So as people evolved and started looking for looser bunch architectures, different flavours, then things like 548 came along.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Because when I've been looking at sort of the history of clonal selections, you went from, let's say, 1920s onwards, and 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it was all about volume, wasn't it? It was just like, how much booze can we make out of this product? And then there was a shift to quality or perceptions of flavour and quality. And now, in the last 10, 20 years, it's been a lot about, because there's a lot of pressure about reducing chemicals in the vineyard, to finding looser bunches, thicker skins, disease tolerant.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really been the factor that's driven, or one of the key factors that's driven 548 is a newer clone in New Zealand. There are a couple of other clones. There's a Muscat clone which came out about the same time. We don't have that.
Is it a Muscat or is it a Chardonnay?
It's a Chardonnay, but the flavours and aromas are closer to Muscat than you would normally expect with Chardonnay. Then we also have Mendoza, which is like a real winemaker favourite in New Zealand. Those bunches tend to be, again, a bit looser, but what characterises that is sort of the hen and chicken nature of the berries. So you get these really small, we call them chickens, but really small berries some years, and they get riper and real intense fruit alongside the larger berries that give it some volume. At some point, it was driven by virus.
That caused the hen and chicken?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, because I always thought hen and chicken was caused by poor fruit set. So normally, when you get poor fruit set, usually what happens is the grapes will fall off, but sometimes they'll stay on, and that's when you get your hen and chicken, because there's no DNA in there, so the plant doesn't invest anything in trying to make them big, because what's the point in attracting birds to a piece of fruit that doesn't do it any good?
Yeah, definitely linked to flowering and the weather around flowering. So last spring we had really hot, windy weather, really good flowering. And if you look in the Mendoza, there's patches where you get a bit of chicken, but it's predominantly large berries, good fruit. But on a cooler year, you get a lot more chickens and, like say, a lot more shatter and berries dropping off. As a selection, it's a bit less dependable, which is not fantastic from a grower point of view, but just the intensity of flavour you get out makes it sought after by winemakers.
Is that because the lots of skin to juice ratio? On a small berry, you're lots of skin to juice, or? Yeah,
possibly, and also the smaller berries tend to be super ripe, so you get that broader spectrum of flavours.
Yeah, all right. So they get further along the physiological ripeness?
So the smaller berries will have a sort of a higher Brix or higher concentration of sugar, and the flavours are going to move more into the kind of riper stone fruit, while the other berries sort of bring some citrus, grapefruit, maybe nectarine in behind that. Okay. So you get a more complex, a wider flavour spectrum.
Kirsten in Matafero up in Gisborne's got quite a lot of Mendoza, and she seemed to think that it brings a savouriness to the wines as well, because the wines didn't taste oaky, but there was a character to them that you would go, oh, something's in there. Do you see that, or are you aware of that?
I guess one of the things that people have picked from here is, like, we're quite citrus-driven, grapefruit, yellow fruit, because we're inland and we get that freshness. The other thing people are picking is sort of some of the kind of cooking herbs, giving a bit of a savouriness, I guess, to that central fruit.
Okay, so you describe it as cooking herbs. Okay.
Our Chardonnay goes to sort of 4 winemakers: Tony Bush, Kate Radburn Cellars, Smith and Cheth with Steve Smith, and Balancia with Warren and Lorraine. And I guess Tony's descriptor around that cooking herbs is sort of kind of a medley or bouquet garni of tarragon, rosemary, thyme and marjoram. Yeah, it's an interesting characteristic. Originally we planted rosemary at the end of all our rows. We have steel posts and wires, and that sort of provided a bit more biodiversity and made it easier to avoid the wires when you're driving around in the tractor.
I love that. People often plant roses at the end and they come up with some story about early indicators. No, mate, it makes it easy getting the tractor around.
So that site characteristic, that Bokogani, started coming through, and initially we thought it was, back in those days, a lot of the fruit was being machine harvested. It's almost all handpicked now. But we thought the machine harvesters were picking up rosemary and carrying that character through to the wine. So we actually pulled a lot of that out. And then a couple of years later, realised, actually, no, that flavour still persists. On New Year's, we opened 4 of those different winemakers' wines together and just had a glass of each one. And you could sort of see a combination of those yellow fruits, citrus, and also the winemaking, the stylistic approach of each winemaker. But as we kind of left those bottles for another couple of days, the vineyard influence really started to shine through. You could still pick which winemaker was making each glass or each bottle, but that kind of common cooking herb theme sort of really came through nice and strong.
Okay, so we've talked about 548 and 95, I think, and the Mendoza. But you've got a couple of other clones in there, haven't you?
Yeah, we planted a little bit of 1066.
What is that? Is that named after the Battle of Hastings? Because here we are in Hastings. Oh my gosh.
I think the French have obviously been doing a lot of work in selections, and it just happens to be the 1066 selection.
Yeah, but I know, it's just funny, isn't it? 1066, French clone in Hastings.
It kind of rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it has a lot of those small berries. People talked about it as a modern day Mendoza, but really the yields that you get from it are uneconomic for a grower, possibly for most wineries as well. So some really nice intense flavour, but just extremely low yielding.
Yep. Okay, so will you pull that out and put something else in, or?
Originally we just planted it as a trial. Someone actually cautioned us about it, but we were keen to see what it was like, and it turned out it was like everyone said it would be. But sometimes you got to try these things for yourself. So we have.
Although my favourite quote at the moment is, "If you're clever, you'll learn from your own mistakes. Really clever people learn from other people's mistakes."
Yep. So we have about 80 plants just outside the house, which Linda picks each year, and we just add that into someone's pick.
Yep. Okay, so they get a mass selection.
Yeah.
And what's the other clone that you've got in there?
The other clone, the Calera, I think it's FPS 107. That's come out of California, and it's really distinctive. It is later ripening, probably even 10 days later, and that really holds its acidity. So I think there's a few people around that are interested, either interested if they're making Chardonnay and they want quite a high acidity, either making it naturally or just that's stylistically what they're after, and maybe also for sparkling for that reason. But it'll be interesting to see as seasons change, and if we get more climate change influence, whether that acidity might be a real asset.
Yeah. Is the flavour profile similar? Everything else is the same? And the bunch, is it loose or is it?
The bunches are actually huge and somewhat tight, but the skins are a bit thicker than, say, 95. So it's a little bit more resilient, and that high acidity also is good for keeping them healthy.
Yeah, it makes sense though to think about where it's coming from California, and that warm, dry. They don't care about moulds and mildew as much, but they care about acidity. So, and also volume. Bigger grapes give you more tonnage, really.
Yeah, and I think that shows through in the later ripening as well. That's come from a really hot climate in recent years. That follows through into our vineyard as well.
What's your favourite Chardonnay?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
What's your favourite Chardonnay to grow? And we'll ask you what's your favourite to drink.
Probably, I think 548's kind of the best of all worlds.
That's a new French clone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of got the spectrum of flavour and it's looser bunches. I think Mendoza, if you look at just the complexity factor, but 548 really chases Mendoza pretty hard in terms of the wine that you can produce.
And 548's the easiest to grow as well, or?
Yeah, it's probably easier than Mendoza and a bit more consistent in terms of yield,
Yep.
but less susceptible to what's happening during flowering.
Yeah, okay. And just out of curiosity, you've got half your vineyard is in Chardonnay. What is the Chardonnay wines from the rest of the world, not Hawke's Bay, for the rest of the world that you think, not necessarily what you're trying to emulate here or anything like that, but just a style of Chardonnay you think you really like?
Linda and I, yeah, we have really different tastes in wine. It's pretty common that we're drinking different wine at night. So to speak for Linda, because she's not mic'd up, she enjoys a lot more kind of fruit-driven wine. To be fair, in recent years, now that she's drinking better Chardonnay, and from some winemakers that really know what they're doing with oak, she's really into sort of a bit of oak influence alongside that fruit.
Yeah.
I really like texture. So we've got people doing fermentation in concrete eggs or concrete tulips, and I think that kind of creamy textural side to things, maybe with whether it's through those vessels or through lees stirring, I really like that.
I've looked at those eggs. I've never really got a big study on them, but my understanding, and I don't really pretend to know, is that because of the way they're shaped, you get circulating currents within the egg. Within it, and that creates, I suppose, if you've got lees or anything like that, it creates almost like continuous batonnage.
Keeps more of the lees in suspension and in contact with the wine. Tony Bush is one of our winemakers, so he has things like Heartwood, which are really orientated around barrel fermentation. His Golden Egg, which is based on that principle of fermenting in a large concrete egg, keeping those lees in suspension and contact. He's just brought out egg number 3 is the name of the wine, but there's like half a dozen eggs there, and there was one that was just standout. Something about the kinetics in that particular egg were different to the others. Yeah, so that's kind of quite a special wine that we're enjoying at the moment.
What is it, egg number 3?
Egg number 3, that's
egg
what
number
it's called.
3. Nice,
It's kind of like the number 8 wire mentality in New Zealand. It probably doesn't translate overseas.
No. I like mine poached, to be honest. Okay then, Ian, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for your time, mate.
Thanks a lot, and great to have you out in New Zealand again.
Cheers, mate. All right, guys, that ends the interview and almost the show. We've got to get the answer to this week's flashcard question. And the question, Jane, is, what is Sus Reserve?
I am scratching my head a bit here, but is it the grape must, sugary grape must that's added back in?
It is. Yeah, no, you're pretty much bang on, actually. That's exactly what it is. So it's a German term, and what you do is you hold back some of the unfermented grape juice, and if you're trying to make a sweeter style of, and normally entry-level wines in Germany, then you add it back in afterwards, effectively giving it a little bit of pop of sweetness to the wine. So bang on.
Oh, brilliant. I feel quite chuffed about that. And listeners, I hope you got it right too. And if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And a big thank you to our patrons for supporting the show. If you'd like to join our community, head over to patreon.com/UK Wine Show.
Until next week, cheers and good drinking.
The UK Wine Show is a weekly podcast brought to you by 3050, the wine tasting company. The show is produced by Chris Scott and the news is read by Jane Scott. To listen to other shows, visit ukwineshow.co.uk. Thank you for listening.